you feel when Donald Trump called you incompetent? What did you feel?
All right, he just addressed this. Thanks.
Please answer that question. If you would.
Okay, fine. Since you are begging, I do believe that Donald Trump is intimidated. I think you're
Okay,
begging.
no interruptions.
So let me just answer that. I do appreciate you begging. So I would just say it like this, that the president has always been intimidated by the intellectual prowess of black men. And so, of course, he would speak in those petite and puerile terms because he's small.
What? What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and most importantly, please make sure that you are following me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today, we have to head on over to the People's Republic of Chicago to discuss Emperor Brandon Johnson. Why is that? Because some old information has resurfaced as it pertains to him possibly and allegedly hiding somewhere around $8 million back when he was still working for the Chicago Teachers Union, right? This was back in, I believe it was 2022. So we're going to get to that in a moment, but I want to start here first, right? Let's start here because as it pertains to just, Brandon Johnson and corruption in the city of Chicago and so on and so forth, Chicago is notoriously known for being a corrupt city as far as politics is concerned, where teams like the Chicago Bulls, right, have struggled to come back to the days of glory of winning back-to-back championships since Michael Jordan. Well, we've had Chicago politicians do that job for the Chicago Bulls, right? And for us Bulls fans by winning back-to-back corruption championships, okay? Look at this here. The first time Chicago was number one in this report was in 2020. I don't have the WTTW article of the first time that Chicago was ranked number one in the corruption report. But nonetheless, in 2020, Chicago ranked number one in corruption. As you can see here, in 2021, Chicago ranks number one again in corruption report. In 2022, three-peat, Chicago ranks number one in corruption. And in 2023, four-peat, back-to-back championships. Okay, four-peat, Chicago ranks number one in corruption reports. Fine. And it appears that, Chicago wasn't able to hold on for a five-peat. I don't think they were able to hold on for five-peat because I couldn't find any articles or anything that stated that they five-peated, right? But nonetheless, this is the city of Chicago. So when you look at how corrupt this city is, it's no surprise that a douchebag, for lack of better words, I shouldn't say for lack of better words, but to not sound so harsh, right? But it's no surprise that a douchebag like Brandon Johnson would be elected as mayor, right? This is the same guy, right? The same guy that's going to make out like a thief in the night. We're talking about to the tunes of millions of dollars. How many of you guys remember when I covered this a while ago? I think it was maybe a year ago now. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's eventual pension payout could exceed $5 million. I'm not going to reread this article, but through a number of loopholes, Brandon Johnson is looking at an early retirement that can get him anywhere between $3.8 million to $5.5 million. Loopholes give Chicago mayor pension $3.8 to $5.5 million. Okay, this moron is getting ready to break the bank. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's pensions are worth an estimated $3.8 million after only 4 years as a teacher and one term as a mayor. It could go even higher depending on his next job. And once again, when they're saying he could go even higher, they're talking about the $5.5 million. This man, as we speak, is completely bankrupting the city of Chicago. Brandon Johnson is bleeding the city dry, leaving them with an unbelievably horrible credit score. But when he leaves office, he will make out with millions. Okay. Millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. These people are so unbelievably corrupt. Now, where I want to transition to next, because I want to continue to kind of beat this corruption horse. You know, you want to move on and say not to beat a dead horse. I want to beat this dead horse. Okay, I actually do want to beat this dead horse before we get to the meat of today's video. And the meat of today's video is this. Leaked video shows Brandon Johnson faced allegations of hiding $8 million in Chicago Teachers Union funds. Before we get into that, I want to give you guys a little bit of a reminder of kind of the first time around concerning auditing and things of that nature with Brandon Johnson, that we see him just being really hush hush and really scared for people to get an inside look of the gifts that he's been receiving and the gifts that the city of Chicago have been receiving, right? Look at this here. Remember this story? Inspector General report details hidden City Hall gift room, accuses mayor of improper reporting. I reported on this back in the top of this year, I would say. So what does it say? January 29, 2025. Okay, so this came out in January. So at the top of this year, I reported on this. I did a video about this. And I just want to take a moment to refresh everybody's memory, right? So let me take a moment to refresh your memory. And I want to get into this news clip now concerning Brandon Johnson. And we're going to get into, I guess, a little bit of his explanation of why he's being so hush-hush about this gift room.
Rob, the mayor firing back, calling the report a mischaracterization. The inspector general is raising concerns after covert efforts by her office to gain access to the gift log and the so-called gift room kept at the mayor's office were rebuffed. At issue, who's giving these gifts and why was the mayor's office fighting to keep the information from the public? Somewhere in the mayor's office at City Hall, there is a special room filled with gifts that have been given to the city of Chicago. Gifts that are supposed to, by law, be reported to the Board of Ethics, but for decades have only been tallied in a log kept in the mayor's office.
For many decades, this city has given people no reason to trust things that happen behind closed doors. And what we have here is gifts being exchanged, perhaps literally in a windowless room in City Hall, with no public accountability, no transparency.
According to a report by the Inspector General, who had to compel the mayor's office to provide a list of gifts, they include Hugo Boss cufflinks, a personalized pen, several designer handbags, size 14 Italian-made shoes, and a bottle of whiskey. All told, the Inspector General says there were more than 300 gifts listed in a log kept in the mayor's office, some items dating back to previous administrations.
For something like 70% of the gifts, there's no information about the identity of the gift giver.
Today, Mayor Brandon Johnson blasting the report.
These gifts that are made to the city, some instances, T-shirts and things that occur at different events. But again, the characterization of how this report came out is misguided.
The Inspector General says it's a matter of transparency.
If gifts were coming from people who were doing business with the city or seeking city contracts or had matters pending before the mayor or whatever the case may be, you'd worry about the influence that came with those.
But the mayor downplayed the nature of the gifts and says he's never seen the so-called gift room.
There's a log. It's there. It's been there for years. The only benefit that I get of being mayor of the city of Chicago is I get to see the full breadth of what the greatest freaking city in the world looks like.
He's so full of crap, right? And so if there was nothing to hide and you've never even seen or really heard this gift room, then unlock the gift room. What's inside? Let everybody know. Let the woman do her report. Let her audit, especially if it has nothing to do with you. And we're talking about gifts and things of that nature that other mayors have gotten prior to your administration. If your hands are that clean, unlock the door. But of course, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to do that. Wanted to keep everything hush hush, right? And now that brings us over to this article here concerning Brandon Johnson, right? The future multi-millionaire Brandon Johnson, after gaming the system through multiple loopholes. There were allegations of him not too long ago, prior to becoming mayor, of him hiding $8 million in Chicago Teacher Union funds. Let's get into this, man, because a leaked video has come out, and I want to play some of that video. But first, let's jump into this article here. I'll read the title off one more time. Leaked video shows Brandon Johnson faced allegations of hiding $8 million in Chicago Teachers Union funds. Now, allow me a moment to scroll down and unpack this article, and then we'll get into the video clip to round things out. So, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson faced allegations that he hid millions of dollars from members of the Chicago Teachers Union while working for the union, video footage obtained by The Last Word shows. The recording surfaces as CTU fights a lawsuit brought by its own members demanding access to the union's annual financial audits, which leadership has refused to share since 2020. Chicago stays corrupt. Let's pivot to this situation here first, right? Before we carry on with this article. Look at this here. Chicago Teachers Union members sue for transparency after 4 years without an audit. I'm going to repeat that again. After 4 years without an audit. Where is the money going? How come any and everything concerning auditing in the city of Chicago is so hush hush? We don't want you to know about the gift room. We don't want you to know about what we're doing with the money in the CTU. Unbelievable. And I just find it very interesting how Brandon Johnson always seems to find himself in the center of all these controversies. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, that's just kind of common knowledge. Let's get into this article right here very quickly. And then we're going to jump back into the original one. On October 8th, the Liberty Justice Center filed a lawsuit on behalf of 4 Chicago Teacher Union members demanding that CTU produce an audit after failing to do so for 4 years. Under CTU's constitution and bylaws, Article 6, Section 1D, the union is required to, and I quote, furnish an audited report of the union which shall be printed to the union's publication. However, CTU has failed to meet this obligation since it published an audit only covering the first half of 2019. So they didn't even publish an audit covering all of 2019. They only published an audit covering the first half of 2019, and after that said, shh, 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 don't worry about the money. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just look the other way, okay? Now here's a direct quote from one of the plaintiffs, right? CTU members deserve to know where their money is going. After 4 years of silence, it's time for transparency, said plaintiff Philip Weiss, who has been a CTU member since 1998. The lawsuit isn't just about us. It's about more than 25,000 educators across Chicago who rely on the union to uphold its commitments. You guys stay corrupt over there. Stay corrupt. Unbelievably corrupt. Wow. Anyways, let's get back into the main article here, where Brandon Johnson just seems to always find himself at the center of some sort of corruption when it comes to auditing, when it relates to gifts and money and things of that nature. Let's scroll down a little bit and carry on, and then we're going to get into this video clip. Brandon Johnson then spoke directly to allegations of misappropriating $8 million in CTU funds. Recorded just days before the union's internal election in May of 2022, the video shows Johnson on a Zoom meeting to CTU members at Morgan Park High School as part of a campaign event for the union's caucus of rank and file educators, or CORE. The acronym is CORE, right? Stacey Davis Gates and Jackson Porter were running for president and vice president of the union, respectively, on the CORE slate. They faced opposition from 2 competing caucuses, members of First and Real. But by stomping for CORE, Johnson may have violated the union's own campaign rules governing official elections. At the time of the event, Johnson was employed as a CTU legislative coordinator and serving as a Cook County commissioner. But the union's election rules say CTU can't use internal resources to promote any candidate for union office, and that violating this rule can be grounds for disqualifications. It wouldn't be the first time CORE leadership ignored the union's rule book. And as many of you know, Stacey Davis Gates did become president of the CTU. For those of you who don't know who she is, this is her right here. I'm not going to dive too deep into her. She is a socialist. I'm not just saying that just to be saying it. It's true. Stacey Davis Gates is a socialist, and she is highly corrupt, but we're not going to go down that rabbit hole today, at least not on this video, right? But she's highly corrupt. But nonetheless, let's carry on, right? Let's carry on. Union rules clearly state CTU must produce an audit for members every year. Specifically, the CTU financial secretary is required by union bylaws to, quote, furnish an audited report of the union, which shall be printed in the union's publications. But Gates, the president of the CTU, remember, this woman here, Stacey Davis Gates, the crooked socialist, but Gates and Porter, her vice president, have refused to do so since 2020. So members filed a lawsuit. The union then filed a motion to dismiss that lawsuit, and Cook County judge denied that motion. Good on them. CTU political director Kurt Hilgendorf said in September of 2023 that the audits were just not quite done yet. You haven't produced a full audit. I mean, not even a full audit. The last audit they produced was a half of an audit in 2019. By 2023, you're talking about what? Close to 4 years have passed, almost. Over 3 for sure, if the last audit was half of 2019. And by 2023, you're just not quite done yet? Tell me you're hiding money and moving money around without telling me that, right? It's just so obvious. In my opinion, I believe, I assume. Nonetheless, nearly 2 years later, the audits still have not been produced. Gates personally attacked a member who questioned her about the issue. Once again, this is Stacey Gates. What did she have to say when she attacked one of the union members about pressing the issue to get those audits published? Here's what she said. She labeled the call for the release of the required audits as a racist dog whistle. I am so sick and tired of you guys and just the way they just misuse and abuse race. It's wow. So you can't even, you're not even allowed to hold the president of the CTU accountable. You're not allowed to ask basic questions. That wasn't even being held accountable. You're the president of the Chicago Teachers Union. Hey, like, you should probably start producing that audit. It's been over 4 years now. I mean, year 5 at this point, right? It's not longer than that if we're talking about 2019. Where are the audits at? That's racist. How dare you ask me to do my job? That's racist dog whistling, asking me to do my job. Are you crazy? Oh my goodness. Now, as we bring this article to a close, represented by the nonprofit Liberty Justice Center, the plaintiff's demands are simple and reasonable. Let members review the full audits, commit to sharing the audits in the future, and set a deadline for completing the 2024 audit. Gates and Porter could easily resolve the case, which is hurting the union's standing with Chicago voters by complying with those demands. But they have so far refused. Why? What is this woman hiding? What is Stacey Davis Gates hiding? And did Brandon Johnson do her bidding? That's the real question. Now let's get into what Brandon Johnson had to say back in 2022 as we bring this video to a close, when he was questioned about this, right? That's what I want to do next. Let's pull up that leaked Zoom call of Brandon Johnson explaining and speaking about what happened with this $8 million and whether or not he had something to do with it kind of just miraculously disappearing.
I've heard it. And I think our sister asked a question earlier about transparency. I'm going to be very vulnerable here. You had a black woman and a black man, myself, who were running the political.
Even the person that was screen grabbing this video chuckled and laughed. Even they went, listen to that again. Come on, man. These people do black people such an unbelievable disservice by constantly false flagging racism. It's unbelievable how much they do this. Let's take a quick moment to listen to the woman chuckle when he says this. Let's just listen to it for a moment. I'm going to rewind it back one more time, then I'll play the whole thing. I promise.
I've heard it. And I think our sister asked a question earlier about transparency. I'm going to be very vulnerable here. You had a black woman and a black man, myself, who were running.
Even she had to go, this is crazy. Anyways, I'm done stopping it. I'm going to play it all the way through now.
I've heard it. And I think our sister asked a question earlier about transparency. I'm going to be very vulnerable here. You had a black woman and a black man, myself, who were running the political department. Don't you think if we had done anything illegal, don't you think that there are forces that would love to destroy and tear us down? I got a wife and kids. I give my life to this work. My children are part of this public school system. I'm a product of the public school system. You think it's worth me hiding $8 million from thousands of members to put my own family at risk for that? I wouldn't do that. And don't think that if I did do something like that, the folks wouldn't come to try to figure out how to take me down. Because that's just what happens to black folks in particular who have some level of power and authority.
Okay, we're back. I just had to take a moment to just compose myself. You know, this just gets so, God, dog. Like, come on, man. Come on with this. Anyways, I'm sorry. I keep interrupting. It's just so annoying to listen to.
I wouldn't do that. And don't think that if I did do something like that, the folks wouldn't come to try to figure out how to take me down. Because that's just what happens to black folks in particular who have some level of power and authority. And so I think the biggest difference, though, between the caucus of rank and file educators and the other two caucuses, there are no other group of people that can say that they led hunger strikes. And I know there are folks that are upset because in the midst of this work, it's not that we've amassed individual power. Brandon Johnson, this caucus of rank and file educators, we're nothing without the 30,000 families that support us in this union and the hundreds of thousands of families that trust us to do right by their children. We're trying to keep people alive. That's what this caucus has done, and I'm proud of that work. Incredibly proud of that work.
There's nothing that would make me more happy than to see Brandon Johnson in jail. I know I'll never see that. I'll never see that. But there's nothing that will make me more happy than that. Nothing in this world. These people are so low down and dirty. They only deserve prison. That's the only thing these people deserve. And I'll end it with that. Let me know in the comment section. Do you guys think that Brandon Johnson had anything to do with hiding $8 million of CTU funds, right? And do you think that, in connection with Stacey Davis Gates, right, the president of the CTU, do you believe that they're colluding together to make sure that it never comes out what actually happened to that $8 million? Let me know in the comment section below, man. Thank you guys for joining me today. That does it for today's news. So please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media posts. And please do not forget to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. Until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.